Hello, I'm Kaiser and welcome to Moose Reads. Before I get started, I want to say that the opinions that I give here are my own opinions. They are extremely subjective. If I dislike a book, it is not a reflection on the author, and it is not a reflection on people who do like it. Different people have different tastes, and that's okay. Today, I will be reviewing The Army of Angels by Jennifer Rainey. This is the third book in the Lovelace and Wick series. It is a queer paranormal fantasy. The description reads, "There's no rest for the wicked, even when the wicked are trying to retire. In the 13 years since they abandoned their demonic duties to hell, Iago Wick and Dante Lovelace have become world travelers and developed an acute aversion to responsibility of any kind. Life is sublime until an old friend comes knocking with a favor to ask. Gloria Ambrose is an angel in need. Her brothers and sisters are disappearing, and signs indicate the angels are being taken to purgatory, a treacherous land that only a demon can navigate. As Dante and Iago plunge into purgatory's depths, they uncover a madman's plot to turn angels into weapons, using the vast wasteland of the underworld as his testing ground. With the help of friends new and old, Mr. Lovelace and Mr. Wick devise a rescue plan, but peril, past lives, and amphibious beasts lurk around every corner. Not to mention, things are never what they seem in purgatory. Whose twisted mind is really behind the Army of Angels?" Once again, 4 stars. Before I discuss this book in its own right, there's something else I'll need to address. Lovelace and Wick is a 4-book series, with the 4th book, The Sole Proprietor, supposedly being the last one. But after Rainey wrote the first book, she wrote a prequel novella, The Vampire Queen. Generally, when a series has a novella, it is not considered part of the series. Rather, it's bonus material for fans who want a little bit more. With The Vampire Queen, there's no indications whatsoever that it should be considered part of the main series. At the end of the first book, it says that Binding Dante Lovelace is next. Amazon lists the novella as being related to the series rather than part of it, but you are absolutely supposed to read it. A fact that became abundantly clear once I was well into the Army of Angels. The Vampire Queen is a prequel taking place somewhere before the events of the first book. Here in the 3rd book, the titular Vampire Queen comes back to play a significant role. The trouble is that when she shows up, Rainey assumes she's already been established for the reader and writes accordingly. This definitely worked to the book's detriment. I also kind of think it works to the series' detriment, given that I doubt it is a good introduction to the series, but reading it second requires you to step back. I have not read The Vampire Queen. I picked it up because when I looked it was free, but since I was already past the point where it would help with the Army of Angels, I didn't bother reading it before I finished both books 3 and 4. However, if you are thinking about reading this series, you should be aware that reading The Vampire Queen after The Last Temptations of Iago Wick will, theoretically, improve the experience. Alright, with that out of the way, let's get into The Army of Angels. I liked the plot a lot better in this book than in Binding Dante Lovelace. This is not only because there weren't any sudden shifts in objective, but also because I felt the plot as a whole felt more relevant to the characters and the genre. It's not that fighting witches, demon hunters, and ancient beasts isn't perfectly natural in paranormal fantasy, it's just that most of it felt a little too abstract as the second installment in a series about 2 demons in love. Incidentally, this book marks the point where I start feeling a lot more wobbly on whether I should be calling these romances. Technically, Iago and Dante have been in love since before the first book, but in the first book that felt more like background than plot. It got a little more relevant in the second book, and it's significantly more prevalent here. Yet, it still doesn't really feel like a romance novel. I'm tempted to say this is an issue with Rainey's writing. I very much suspect she was aiming for romance and just doesn't know how to write it effectively. Iago and Dante get married at the start of this book, and part of the resolution to the plot hinges on the romance between 2 other characters. Love is clearly a theme, it just isn't a very well developed one. Of course, I don't think it helped that the couple in the secondary romance just annoyed me. Part of this was that one of the characters involved, the Vampire Queen herself, was written in a way that I thoroughly disliked. She was one of those super sweet, cutesy characters that is also extremely homicidal, which is neither my favorite type of character nor a joke I find especially funny. And she wasn't helped by being a character I was clearly supposed to know, but didn't. Rainey also introduced another character in this that should have been menacing, but fell extremely flat. It was very much a tell, don't show issue. We were told repeatedly how scary the character is and how terribly powerful, but for various reasons, he never actually did anything. I would have liked to see him used more effectively. There was a twist near the end of this book that was so obvious the moment they started to so much as hint at it that I wish Rainey had just not bothered hinting in the first place. Also, both the antagonists and protagonists suffer from an obscene amount of brain rot at some point in this plot, which I'll discuss in detail in the spoiler section. Speaking of the spoiler section, if you don't want spoilers, now is the time to pause or close the video. For everyone else, let's talk details. Once again, we start the book by being introduced to a character who mostly doesn't matter. This time it's a satanic priestess the demons are trying to get a grimoire from. They mention her again while planning, and she's mentioned again in the next book, but ultimately her only real contribution to anything is presiding over Iago and Dante's wedding. Purgatory was kind of disappointing. It is a sentient plane, and Iago makes a lot of noise about how dangerous and horrible it is, but they've barely even arrived before it decides to test them, and the test boils down to an illusion of Shakespeare leading them to where they need to be. Purgatory wants them to kill a Leviathan, a task which is accomplished by destroying its heart. This entire scenario made no sense to me. I understand Purgatory wanting to test their dedication, especially as we're meant to think Iago abandoning Viola at the end of the previous book was an act of faithlessness. To test Iago, the Leviathan's heart takes the form of Viola. She's Iago's friend and someone he feels guilty for leaving behind, so killing her takes dedication. Except he's not killing Viola, he's killing something that looks like Viola, and he knows it. He asks Purgatory point blank why killing one of its denizens will prove his loyalty, and it doesn't really give an answer. And then he manages to kill fake Viola by reminding himself that she's not real. It doesn't seem like a very good loyalty test, which becomes all the more clear later, when, after leading Gloria to the prison as she'd asked, Iago thinks to himself that they could just leave, having repaid their debt. Purgatory may feel Iago has proven his dedication, but he clearly doesn't give two shits about saving it. Lucifer is the character I mentioned before that is supposed to be scary, but doesn't do anything. The bad guys are capturing angels to power and pilot some kind of mech, but over time the angels keep burning out. Because Lucifer is a very powerful angel, they hope he'll be more resilient. He gets to be a little menacing when he's first introduced, because despite being imprisoned, he doesn't seem worried. But once Dante is accidentally captured along with one of Gloria's lieutenants, and they are imprisoned together, Lucifer admits that he's powerless to escape. Also, we're never given a clear idea of how he came to be captured. He says one of the princes of hell betrayed him, but without knowing the form that betrayal took, it feels like he was astoundingly easy to capture. They're able to escape because, while the prison is warded against demons and angels, Dante also happens to be a witch, so he's able to use his magic to break them out. He agrees to do so on the condition that Lucifer temporarily call off a demon that's been sent to hunt them for defecting. When they make their escape, they encounter a lot of guards, and Lucifer continues to be entirely useless. Dante is the only reason he gets away, which is the only reason he isn't reduced to being used as a battery. Once they're free, the only things he does are fly, something all angels can do, and clean muck off their clothes with the snap of his fingers. He doesn't even get to show off in the final confrontation, because he doesn't care and he just goes off for a holiday on Earth. At no point does he actually seem either scary or powerful, and it felt like a total waste. The twist I saw coming a mile away is that Michael is actually orchestrating the entire plan. This series already has enough people trying to manipulate supernatural forces with scientific means that I hadn't given any thought to there being someone else behind the scheme other than the human Strunk, so this could have been a decent twist. Unfortunately, once the plot starts building momentum, Rainey tells us that there's an angel working behind the scenes. At that point, it doesn't take much consideration to guess it's Michael. I think if Rainey had just not mentioned the angel at all, it would have been better. Like, she could have had scenes where Strunk vehemently believes he's doing God's work without flat out telling the reader he's been speaking to an angel. And then, when Gloria goes to arrest Strunk in the name of Michael, his reveal would have had a better chance of coming as a shock without really coming out of nowhere. As it stands, it's played like a reveal, but I doubt there are many people who couldn't see it coming. Then, of course, there's the warding spells and turnip issue. Gideon, the Vampire Queen's boyfriend who is working for the bad guys, has been sending letters detailing the operation, and these include copies of the sigils being used to bind the angels and demons' power. Iago sends these sigils to his satanic priestess, and she gives them a ritual that will counter both the sigils and drugs, and says they could also just wear a turnip around their neck. Gloria reports this to Michael, but she then fails to take even the simplest steps to protecting herself. So does Michael, but he at least has the excuse that he didn't expect anyone to use those measures against him. I complain a lot about setup and payoff issues, but I don't think anything ever illustrated the concept so spectacularly. What was the point of writing to the priestess? What was the point of getting an answer? What was the point of the turnip? I assume it's supposed to be a joke, but it wasn't funny. If Rainey was going to have this thread completely dead end, she could have at least done it deliberately. Have Gloria take measures to protect herself, but given that she reported those measures to Michael, he undoes them immediately. It still would have been a waste of time, but it wouldn't have felt like Rainey just forgot. Another issue I had is, I think, more a personal preference than a craft issue. Michael's plan is absolute nonsense. This isn't necessarily a bad thing. People have very stupid ideas all the time. But I really hate villain plots that are demonstrably stupid, especially when no one bothers to point it out. Michael was upset that people were losing faith in God. He decided the best way to fix the problem was by demonstrating the power and glory of God by having angels pilot mechs to wage war for humans. I can kind of see where he was going, but mostly it just seems ridiculous to me that the best way to make people believe in the might of God was to use his angels as little more than batteries and guns on behalf of human greed and hatred. Apparently, that's just me, because Gloria had ample opportunity to point out that he was really devaluing angels and, by extension, God's glory, and she didn't so much as consider it. The last thing that really annoyed me in this book was another setup and payoff issue. The prison that the bad guys are using used to be run by demons, and it turns out Dante was once sent there to be punished for the heinous crime of standing up for another demon. He mentions this several times. We never learn what the demon did or how exactly Dante stood up for him. I kept expecting this mystery demon to become relevant. I guess the point of it was to give Dante a reason for having been in the prison. Not that that had much of an impact on the story either, but there are definitely ways that could have happened that didn't involve a random demon. My guess was that it would turn out the demon chasing them was the demon Dante tried to protect. The demon chasing them is named Jack Brimstone, and Dante has never seen him. They don't meet until the end of the book. Also, multiple people comment that they don't think that's his real name, and Lucifer confirms this while he and Dante are in prison together. It would have been a perfect opportunity to pay off the setup, but instead, nothing comes of it. Still, even with those issues, I thought the plot was pretty good. I still loved Dante and Iago. I liked Gloria and her underling as well, and aside from being completely useless, I thought Lucifer was at least a decent character. I will admit that my investment in the series was waning at this point, but given that there was only one book left, I went ahead and finished the series. That's all I have to say about the Army of Angels. If you liked this video, I hope you'll watch more in the future. Thanks for watching this one. Bye!